Here's what's coming up on your horizon. Well, proposed new rules could let small unmanned aerial vehicles called UAVs, or now UASs, fly the friendlier skies. This week, we begin by looking at the future of the growing industry of unmanned aircraft.
In any emerging market or industry like this, there's always growing pains. And if you just think about it logically, the FAA currently manages the airspace, but they do so with only one thing in mind, and that's safety. And if you're going to suddenly bring new airframes in that simply don't have pilots that can see and avoid, there's going to be a problem, and therefore you need to fix that problem. So you have to fix them with technology.
Our J.D. Roseman introduces us to an Oklahoman who's not shy about being a coy cowboy.
I've always liked fish.
And we end our day in Tahlequah at an historic Cherokee village.
When you visit Tahlequah, you will step back into 1710.
Stay with us for Oklahoma Horizon.
Oklahoma Horizon is made possible by the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education.
Oklahoma's investment in career tech provides more than nationally recognized technology education and training. It produces solid financial returns for the state's economic future. Oklahoma Career Tech, elevating our economy.
And the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping good people grow good things. And now, from the Career Tech Studios in Stillwater, here's your host, Rob McClendon.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Horizon. Well, the Federal Aviation Administration has proposed new rules and regulations regarding the use of unmanned aircraft systems, or UASs. Privacy and safety are leading themes in the thick 195-page proposal, clamping down on who can use a UAS and for what purpose. Joining me now is our Andy Barth.
Well, Rob, the FAA identified 4 potential markets for small unmanned aircraft systems: aerial photography, precision agriculture, search and rescue and law enforcement, and bridge inspection. And with the mounting popularity of these small flying objects, industry leaders and university experts gathered together to discuss the growing trends in the UAS industry.
They're known for being stealth and lethal during war. Now the use of unmanned aircraft is attracting civilians, while raising concerns about safety and privacy. University of North Dakota's Michael Moore.
In any emerging market or industry like this, there's always growing pains. And if you just think about it logically, the FAA currently manages the airspace, but they do so with only one thing in mind, and that's safety. And if you're going to suddenly bring new airframes in that simply don't have pilots that can see and avoid, there's going to be a problem, and therefore you need to fix that problem. So you have to fix them with technology.
And Oklahoma Secretary of Science and Technology Stephen McKeever says when it comes to UAS, Oklahoma is a key player.
We're quite big. We're one of the leading states in terms of promoting the industry generally. We're extremely well respected. We have university programs, we have R&D companies, small companies, large companies. We have people who are looking at investments and looking at Oklahoma to do that. So we're getting all the pieces of the jigsaw in place, and indeed we are considered to be one of the leaders.
The FAA proposes strict guidelines on the commercial use of UAS. They must weigh less than 55 pounds, have a maximum airspeed of 100 miles per hour, and they can't fly over 500 feet above the ground.
You think about everything that's going on in the Middle East, and you get snippets in the press about a drone was used for this, or drones were used for Osama bin Laden. And then, of course, there's data acquisition, right? You want to be able to take pictures, take videos, send that data, and use the data.
And according to retired Brigadier General Ben Robinson, unmanned aircraft systems bring value to the state.
I think it's a boost to our economy. You know, one of our 5 economic sectors is aerospace and defense. But if you take the UAV industry, aerospace and defense, you can apply it to transportation, energy, agriculture, IT. So really the UAV industry, while it is part of aerospace and defense or the UAS industry, it really transects all of them. So you can apply UAS technology to across all the major industrial sectors in the state of Oklahoma.
From the battlefield to the cattle field, unmanned aircraft systems are here to stay.
I think the future is just absolutely bright, flying high.
So Andy, under the new rules from the FAA, not just anyone can fly these unmanned aircraft.
That's right, Rob. The FAA has proposed a long list of very strict certification requirements. Now, some of those rules include that operators must pass an initial aeronautical knowledge exam, pass a recurrent knowledge exam every 24 months, and they must undergo vetting by the Transportation Security Authority. And for the complete list of proposed rules and regulations, just head to our website at okhorizon.com, where we have a link under this story.
All right. Thank you so much, Andy.
You're welcome, Rob.
Now, when we return, I visit with a leading expert and a proponent for making Oklahoma's skies the friendliest of all for unmanned aerial systems.
You're watching Oklahoma Horizon, featuring some of the good things that are happening in the great state of Oklahoma.
Well, researchers at Oklahoma State University have gained nationwide attention for their efforts to design UASs to help study everything from tornadoes to a rancher's herd. Earlier, I sat down with Jamey Jacob, a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering, who has worked on projects ranging from solar aircraft to a UAS mission on Mars. Well, Jamey, I cannot remember a time when UAVs have been in the news as much as they have been just in the past 6, 7, 8 weeks.
It really is an exciting time right now, and primarily, you know, what's gotten all the buzz is that the long-awaited rules have been released by the FAA. Now, these are still proposed rules, but you know, we've been waiting these for several years. So the fact that we finally have something to look at that gives us an idea what the future is going to look like, you know, it allows us to plan now.
Clear up something for me, if you would. We call these, you can see it in our graphic here, the UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. But then in interviewing people for this show, a lot of them referred to them as UAS. What is the difference?
Well, the real difference is when we say UAV, we refer to that as unmanned aerial vehicle. In the moniker, you know, the acronym has changed a little bit to really emphasize the fact that there's a system involved, and that's where the S comes from, unmanned aircraft system. And that's particularly important from the FAA's view. So if you're certifying a manned aircraft, what you're really worried about is just the aircraft. With a unmanned aircraft, what you now have to worry about is the control station on the ground as well. So we talk about a UAS, we're really referring to the entire system, not just the UAV. But you know, if you refer to it UAV, UAS, drone, you know, they all kind of, you know, mean the same thing in modern parlance.
And I know there has been some concern about interference with the UAVs with aircraft, manned aircraft. Is there any way that these two can talk to each other?
Well, certainly, and you know, if you look at the long-term plan for the FAA, they're requiring by 2020 that all aircraft, both manned and unmanned, will have ADS-B on board, and that's essentially a broadcast system that, you know, tells other operators in the area where your aircraft is. And that's going to include all general aviation aircraft. So if you're operating the airspace, you'll be able to know where all the other aircraft are currently at. Currently, right now, we don't have that capability, so there's not a process in place that allows, you know, air traffic control to see all aircraft in the airspace. And that's really the big issue with allowing unmanned aircraft to operate in the national airspace, is providing them with some capability that once that aircraft is in the air, it can see and then avoid manned aircraft. And that's really there to provide, you know, safety for, you know, both manned and unmanned aircraft, as well as people on the ground.
Certainly a hot technology. What are some of the areas that you're the most excited about?
But, you know, it's a really exciting time, and I like to use the analogy of the smartphone. You know, 10 years ago, nobody knew that they needed to have a smartphone, and they didn't realize all the things that could be done with it. And after this technology was put in the hands of developers, they came up with so many new things that they can do. And I think we'll see the same thing, you know, once these rules are finally put into place. But, you know, some of the things that we're currently working on that we're excited about, you know, is using these for first responders, having the capability, you know, of every fire truck having a unmanned aircraft as part of its toolkit. so they can, get a bird's eye view of what that fire looks like, where right now they really don't have that capability. Weather monitoring, and of course you'll have lots of applications on the commercial sector, oil and gas, infrastructure inspection such as bridges and roads, and of course the biggest one is going to be precision agriculture. And if we look at what this means for Oklahoma, Oklahoma, our three most important economies are oil and gas, agriculture, and aerospace. And unmanned aircraft will be able to touch all three of those.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about these unmanned aircraft actually are being piloted by people, which means a workforce need, and that's something that you're working on and other people are working on.
There are a couple programs now across the state that are just getting started to be able to train unmanned aircraft pilots or operators. So there's a program here at OSU in aviation education that they're currently developing that will train unmanned aircraft pilots, as well as the Spartan Academy in Tulsa.
And I guess it's also important to get young people interested in this field, and that's something you do with what's become an annual event called Speedfest.
Yeah, so this is something that Professor Andy Arena started several years ago, and he's been working on this for many years. He originally started using unmanned aircraft as a teaching tool for our undergraduate students back in the 1990s. Designing an unmanned aircraft is just much like designing a manned aircraft. You can build it, test it, and fly it. And through this program that he developed, essentially became one of the preeminent undergraduate design, build, fly programs in the country. And this annual event that they used to participate in, they won more trophies at this than all other universities combined.
Yeah, and I think probably like any STEM field, it's always important to get people involved in it younger and younger ages.
Right. It gets them really excited. It's a hands-on activity. And the great thing about unmanned aircraft is, when you talk to young people about it, what you're doing is you're bringing all these different things together. You're bringing in aircraft and robots. And when you bring those two exciting things together and marry them now with computers, we do a lot of simulation, a lot of computer programming involved. It gets these young kids really excited about the technology and where it's going. And I think that's kind of the most exciting thing for the future is they'll bring a lot of really new ideas to this, and we're only just kind of touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of what these things will be able to do.
So what about some of the practical uses that these could be applied to right now?
Well, some of the things that we're looking at, developing the technology for is to, for example, help first responders. Take the case of a wildfire. Of course, we've had a lot of really nasty wildfires here in Oklahoma the last several years. When a firefighting team comes up to a wildfire, they're essentially heading for the smoke. They have no idea the extent of that actual fire. And particularly if they're out of the metropolitan area, they have no aerial assets available, so they can't see what that fire actually looks like. We're developing the systems that will allow them to carry this essentially in the back of their fire truck. Once they get to the fire, be able to deploy this, get an aerial view of the fire, but also track first responders in the field. We had 19 firefighters lose their life in Arizona just a few years back, and that was all about situational awareness. They weren't able to communicate with other first responders on the ground, and they were not able to see the fire and the danger around them. So having this capability, we know will be able to save lives in the future.
And agriculture uses it a lot too, to monitor fields.
Right. We expect about 80% of the number of UAVs to be used in precision agriculture. Eventually every farmer will be able to have one, flying at relatively low altitudes and using what's called multispectral imaging, where you're combining both visible and infrared light together to be able to determine the crop health. And really what that's going to allow farmers to do is to apply nutrients, fertilizer, water to very specific parts of the field, and eventually save them money, so it's better for their bottom line, but it's also better for the environment.
All right, Jamey Jacobs, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with unmanned aerial systems gaining popularity, students are now designing and building their own UASs to compete in contests taking off across the country. Joining me now with more is our Courtney Maye.
Rob, the OSU Speedfest has been flying high for 5 years. Everyone from college students to even younger students at high schools and Oklahoma Tech Centers compete to show off their design and flying skills. It's an annual competition that is the culmination of a year of work in the lab and classroom.
From takeoff to landing, students involved in the OSU Speedfest learn the mechanics behind taking flight.
This will be our 3rd year competing at Speedfest.
Aimee Harden is the aviation maintenance instructor at Gordon Cooper Technology Center and says preparing for the competition begins with a blank slate.
They're building the aircraft from scratch, so they're seeing the ribs and the spars of the wing and how that comes together. They're building the control surfaces, and the great thing about Speedfest is they actually get to go out and fly it and see how it responds and test out those factors that they've built into the plane.
And for students like Nathan Anders, building model planes prepares him for a career in aviation.
We learn how to build RC planes, and we learn how to fix aircraft, and it's kind of cool because a lot of the things that you might learn building your RC planes transfers over to the real industry that we will hopefully get to work in.
And with every measurement and brush of sandpaper, Harden students have one goal in mind: perfection.
I'm teaching them to work on planes, and nobody wants to fly on a plane that's going to, have any sort of issues. We really stress the perfection and making sure that things are done right the first time. These planes are a really good way for them to get a bigger picture of what they're going to be doing on larger planes as well.
And for Anders, his team is going the extra mile to be competitive.
For this plane in particular, we build the basic model aircraft, and we've added retractable landing gears, and we're currently putting a cowling over it, trying to smooth everything out as much as we can.
They really get a good understanding of how a larger plane works because it covers everything from rigging to fuel to engines to, just basic aircraft structure.
Working toward a career in flight, where the sky is the limit.
Now this year's Speedfest takes off April 24th and flies through the 26th. And students not only fly their planes, but also exhibit their designs for spectators and recruiters.
And I hear there are some big guns there to recruit these students.
There are. NASA is a key sponsor for the event, and they recruit a lot of college students. While also OSU President Burns Hargis attends the event, and he talks to a lot of high school students and tech center students about continuing their education at the university.
All right. Thank you so much, Court.
You're welcome, Rob.
Still to come on Oklahoma Horizon, looking into the past to understand the Cherokee Nation's future.
So not only is it a moment that you get to spend with living Cherokee people, it's also a bit of a window into the past.
But first, a coy cowboy.
Well, whether it's for a backyard pond or even the show world, ornamental koi fish are a type of cold water carp that are not only brightly colored, but hardy, able to survive in most any climate, which has made them a popular and often expensive choice for fish enthusiasts. Here's our J.D. Roseman.
Well, today, according to the USDA, 96% of farms in the U.S. are family-owned and operated, and the same can be said for the Kleinholz family, only they aren't raising the traditional livestock that you might expect to see in Oklahoma. Koi fish. Beautiful, vibrant colors. Decorative and personal. Kurt Kleinholz is a koi breeder in Stillwater.
I've always liked fish. From a really young age, I would go down to our reservoir pond, which has game fish in it, and I'd go fishing, and I'd sit out there for hours. And then I saw a couple of koi one day, and, it just kind of took off.
And that passion opened doors. His father, Conrad Kleinholz, started the koi farm with only a few eggs.
I was going to dump it out, and my wife said, no, let's see what happens. He was intrigued and never got over it.
They aren't something found in the supermarket, yet they corner the ornamental fish market.
Ornamental is completely personal preference, and then what you do with it is also personal preference.
They can be a decoration in your backyard pond, or be a part of the show world in the spotlight.
Show quality animals, regardless of whether they're fish, birds, dogs, cats, horses, whatever, are valuable because of the attention and the care that goes into them. Okay?
Hard and time-consuming work that pays off.
Dirty jobs. In the wintertime, it's cold. You got to go out and get in a pond. You better bring gloves. You've got ice on it. You got to get the fish out.
Doing the work themselves and reaping all the reward.
Now we just keep getting higher and higher quality fish and breeding better and better fish every year. I would like to compete against the Japanese breeders for business here in the U.S.
Big aspirations, but as a family, Kurt says they can succeed.
It's great. He's taught me everything I know. Yeah, sometimes we butt heads and we clash, but it's really great because whenever I have an issue that I haven't seen before, I go to him and, hey, what's going on? And we figure it out.
Striking fish, a thriving market, and a determined family making their aquaculture niche on the Oklahoma plains. Now, the Kleinholz family told me while they are looking to expand their koi operation, due to the continued drought, their water supply isn't stable enough to increase their production where they are. So they have recently purchased another fish farm with the capacity to house over 1 million fish and are hoping to one day raise nothing but ornamental koi.
Want to share something you've seen here today? Well, all of our episodes are streaming on our YouTube channel at Oklahoma Horizon TV. Or you can subscribe to our weekly free podcasts on iTunes. Well, the Cherokee Nation is giving visitors an opportunity to experience the past. Cherokee Heritage Center now has an exhibit that allows tourists to go back in time. Joining me now is our Andria Morgan.
The Dilligwa Cherokee Village was originally designed to interpret a reconstructed Cherokee town, giving the public an inside look at the early life of the Cherokee people. It's a step back in time, from the buildings to the daily activities. An exhibit that gives a glimpse into a life long ago.
When you visit Dilligwa, you will step back into 1710. The reason that Dilligwa exists is to teach people about Cherokee history, heritage, and culture through a living history format.
So this is the peace pipe design I told you guys about.
Candessa Tehee is the director at the Cherokee Heritage Center in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and says the tourists can see firsthand what life was like in the 1700s.
So not only is it a moment that you get to spend with living Cherokee people, it's also a bit of a window into the past because we are doing so much to uphold our culture and traditions.
A daily reminder of the Cherokee past.
Dilligwa features 7 guided tours per day. On these tours, you'll get to go inside a summer home, go inside a winter home, go inside our large council house, our summer council house, and view various interpretive stations like basket making, flint knapping, blowgun shooting, things like that.
Betty Frogg, who teaches at the basket weaving station, says that weaving is a common skill for Cherokee women that embraces the creativity of their culture.
The Cherokee women have always been known for their double wall basket, whether it's a river cane basket or a commercial double wall basket. But we start at the bottom and we go as high as we're going to go. We come back down and we finish at the bottom, and you can't tell where we start or finish.
And while it's mostly common for Cherokee women to weave baskets, Noel Grayson says the men excel in the skills of making weapons and tools.
Flint Knap here. I'm showing primitive skills, just about anything. I like to promote our culture, naturally, and anything that we did in there. I'm a recognized master for flint knapping, for bowyery, which is making bows, and flint knapping is making stone tools. Every man made his own bows, and so he made it to his liking. Personal preference, height, shape, everything, strength.
Baskets and weapons are not the only thing the Cherokee people make at Dilligwa. They also create their own shoes and clothing.
We just basically cut them out from a pattern that we made, and I stitched mine with leather, and some stitched theirs with sinew. But they're not hard to make at all. They're kind of hot, but it's something that we wear here, and people get to see what we actually wore during this time.
A living history, reminding Oklahomans of a Cherokee village from the 1700s. Although Dilligwa is fairly new, it is currently the most historically accurate Cherokee village that exists today.
All right, thank you so much, Andrea.
You're welcome, Rob.
You can keep up with us throughout the week. Just head to okhorizon.com, where you can see more of any of our stories, read our reporters behind the scenes blogs, See what others are saying about us on Twitter, and face the facts with our regular updates. So reach out and touch us anywhere and anytime. Next time on Oklahoma Horizon, we mark a sober anniversary with some inspiring stories of perseverance in the face of tragedy.
You determine in your mind, am I going to be a victim and allow this tragedy to be a stumbling block to me, or am I going to overcome this tragedy that's been in my life and use it as a stepping stone to the next part of my life?
The Murrah building bombing 2 decades later on Oklahoma Show for the Heartland, Oklahoma Horizon. Well, that is going to wrap us up for today, but you can see more of any of our stories on our website at okhorizon.com. You can listen to us on the go with our weekly podcast on iTunes. Follow us throughout the week on Twitter at OK Horizon TV, or just become a Horizon fan on Facebook. I'm Rob McClendon. Thanks for including us in your day. See you back here next week.
Horizon is made possible by the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Thank you for watching Oklahoma Horizon.